Mother-in-law secretly spiked my drink at my wedding. My mother-in-law secretly spiked my drink with alcohol at my wedding. I lost consciousness, the banquet was ruined, and now she is trying to buy my forgiveness for $5,000. Hello everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm 27. A week ago, I married my wonderful husband Jaden. He is 32. Our wedding was beautiful, like something out of a telenovela. We met 2 years ago at a local coffee shop. I was a regular there. My morning coffee was my salvation to wake up before work. One day, a tall guy with kind eyes was standing behind me in line. He seemed sweet, but to be honest, I didn't pay much attention to him then. All I was thinking about was getting my latte as soon as possible. Later that same week, I ran into him again. This time, we started talking while waiting for our drinks. We chatted about everything: favorite books, weird childhood stories, even our shared love for this cozy coffee shop. We laughed so much that for the first time that day, I felt truly alive. Looking back, I realize I jumped to conclusions at first. Maybe because I was too focused on my routine, or because Jaden wasn't exactly my type. But that day, something changed. There was a genuine kindness in him, a warmth in his smile that I couldn't ignore. We exchanged numbers, and that same evening, Jaden texted me, suggesting we go out for dinner. We went to a small Italian restaurant on a quiet street. The food was amazing, but the most important thing was the conversation. We talked for several hours, and it felt so easy and natural. It turned out we had a lot in common: a love for old movies, a secret passion for karaoke, even though neither of us can sing well, and tacos. Over the following weeks, we saw each other more and more often. We went hiking, explored museums, and even tried, unsuccessfully, to attend a pottery class. The more time I spent with Jaden, the more clearly I understood how special he was. He was funny, smart, supportive, and always knew how to make me laugh. Thanks to him, I was becoming a better person, but at the same time, I felt like myself around him. And then on our second anniversary, Jaden gave me an incredible proposal. We went for a weekend to a cozy cabin in the mountains. Snow was falling quietly outside, and we were sitting huddled together by the fireplace when he dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring. I don't even remember exactly what he said because all my attention was fixed on the light of love in his eyes. Of course, I said yes. Upon returning from this trip, I excitedly began planning the wedding. But that's when everything went according to an unexpected script. After the engagement, I met his mom, Maria, who is 57, for the first time. She lived out of town, so she hadn't had the chance to meet me before. At first, Maria was very sweet to me. She said she was happy her son was finally getting married. Jaden was her only child, and she mentioned she had always wanted more children. Therefore, my appearance in the family became an important event for her, as if she had gained another child. She even gave me a warm hug and said she couldn't wait for us to get to know each other better. But everything changed very quickly. That weekend, she came to stay with us to help with wedding preparations and spend time together. I was happy, thinking we would get closer and become friends. But the longer she stayed, the more her behavior began to make me uncomfortable. The first passive-aggressive comment was made at breakfast on Saturday. I had made my favorite pancakes, and while Jaden was drinking coffee in the yard, Maria looked at me with a smile and said, "Oh, I see you're not particularly worried about carbs, are you?" I laughed it off then, thinking it was just a random remark, but it stung. Later that day, while we were flipping through wedding dress magazines, Maria pointed to a model and said, "This dress is so beautiful, but it's designed for a very specific figure. Not everyone can wear it." As she said this, she shot a glance at me. It was like a subtle hint that, in her opinion, I wouldn't be able to wear something like that. I just nodded and tried to brush it off, but inside, I felt uneasy. The comments continued. When we went shopping for decorations, she casually said, "You know, my friend's daughter lost 9 kilograms for her wedding and looked absolutely stunning. Have you thought about that?" I was shocked and didn't know how to respond. I muttered something about being happy with my body, but I felt she was judging me for not striving to lose weight. The next morning, she was rummaging through my kitchen cabinets and said, "Oh, you have a lot of snacks here. I would try to keep healthier food at home. You don't want to gain weight before the wedding, right?" It was hard to believe she was still picking on my weight. and it was starting to really hurt. It felt as if she was nitpicking on purpose, even though she always had a smile on her face and her voice sounded kind. The strangest thing was that Maria never made such comments in front of Jaden. It was like she had a switch. Around her son, she was all charm and kindness. But as soon as he left the room, the barbs would start. I felt like I was living in two different realities. In one, I was accepted and loved, and in the other, I was constantly criticized and judged. At first, I decided not to tell Jaden. After all, she is his mother, and I didn't want to create tension, especially when we were just engaged and so happy. I convinced myself it was a small thing I could get through. Besides, I'm not thin. I have curves, and I love my body. I worked hard for a long time to gain confidence. Maria's comments were more annoying than destructive. It seemed she was just trying to poke a hole in my self-esteem, but I wasn't going to let her. However, Maria began to visit more often. It seemed every weekend she was at our place, and it was starting to drive me crazy. I worked Monday through Friday, and weekends were the only time for wedding prep. But no matter where I looked, Maria was there, helping or just hanging around. It was hard to focus when she was constantly butting in with her comments and acting like she knew best. One weekend, she called and said she was coming over again. My heart sank. I really needed time alone to plan the wedding without her interference. So I said I would be busy and wouldn't be home. She asked what I'd be doing. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out that I was going to look at wedding dresses. I guess I just wanted her to understand I had serious business. To my horror, she was very excited and said she wanted to go with me. I didn't know how to refuse without being rude, so I reluctantly agreed. And there she was, standing at my door with a wide smile, repeating how happy she was to help me find the perfect dress. I tried to smile back, but everything inside me tightened. I already had a premonition of how terrible this trip would be. We visited several bridal salons. From the moment we walked in, Maria switched into mom mode, suggesting dresses I didn't like and making comments about how certain styles wouldn't suit my figure. It was exhausting. I felt like I couldn't even breathe without feeling her judgment. When I tried on a dress I really liked, she said, "It's pretty, but don't you think it's too tight around the waist? Maybe something looser would suit you better?" I was so disappointed because I really loved that dress. But her words made me doubt myself. By the end of the day, I hadn't chosen an outfit and felt depressed. Maria went home, and I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Over the next few days, she continued to pester me with messages asking when I was going for the dress again. Each time, I replied that I didn't know when I'd find the time. I firmly decided that this time I wouldn't tell her my plans. But everything fell apart when Jaden told his mom I was going to the dress shop the next day. She immediately called and asked what time she should arrive. Now I had to make a decision. Maria had already made so many remarks about my body that I was simply afraid to take her with me. I knew if she went, the day would be ruined by her comments and judgment. So I decided to make up an excuse. I told her the bridal salon had rules. You could only bring 2 people, and my mom and my maid of honor were already going with me. Yes, I knew it was a very stupid lie, but at that moment, nothing better came to mind. Maria immediately declared it was absurd and asked, "What kind of bridal salon only allows 2 people? That's stupid." I started to stutter and said, "Yeah, I know, it's weird, but that's what they said." I was sweating, realizing how dumb my lie was. I quickly added that I had to go and cut the call before she could ask more questions. As soon as I hung up, a wave of guilt washed over me. I hated lying, especially to Jaden's mom. But I just couldn't handle another day of her criticism. I decided to focus on the good and remind myself that this day should be joyful and exciting. My mom and friend picked me up, and we headed to the salon. I tried to cast aside the guilt and enjoy the moment, and I managed to find a dress I simply fell in love with. After that, Maria stopped calling, texting, and coming to our house. She continued to communicate with Jaden, and it was a relief. It meant there was no awkwardness between them. I sent her a photo in the dress, hoping to share the joy. In response, she only sent a thumbs up emoji and wrote nothing else. I didn't know how to interpret that, but I decided not to dwell on it. I had too many wedding prep chores to waste energy on her reaction. As the wedding day approached, I was overloaded with tasks and didn't write to Maria again. There was a lot to settle: finalize the guest list, confirm catering, oversee the decor. And then, finally, the long awaited day arrived. It exceeded all my expectations. The ceremony was beautiful, and I couldn't stop smiling as I walked down the aisle to Jaden. His look when he saw me in the dress was priceless. It was worth going through all the stress of preparation for that. We said our vows, exchanged rings, and just like that, we became husband and wife. The holiday reception started out wonderfully. We had a stunning venue, the weather was perfect, the food turned out very tasty, and it seemed all the guests were having a great time. I was thrilled with our first dance. Jaden and I had taken a few lessons, and we managed not to step on each other's toes even once. Everything was like a fairy tale. I was on cloud nine. Everything was going smoothly until I decided to get a drink. I went to the bar for something refreshing, and Maria was standing there. She turned to me with a wide smile and said, "I see you're having a wonderful time. Let me treat you. Just relax and enjoy." I was surprised by her sudden enthusiasm, but I thought maybe she was trying to smooth over the awkwardness. She handed me a non-alcoholic cocktail. I thanked her and took a sip. A few minutes later, I felt sleepy, but I figured it was just exhaustion. And then I fell to the floor and lost consciousness. Everything suddenly went black, and the next thing I heard was Jaden's panicked voice calling for an ambulance. There was desperate alarm in his voice. He was trying to keep me from drifting off. People began to gather around, but for me, everything was like a fog. When the paramedics arrived, they quickly brought me to my senses and started asking what I had eaten and drunk that day. I told them everything, including the banquet food and the cocktail Maria gave me. They grew concerned and asked if there was anything unusual or if I had taken medication. At that moment, Maria looked guilty. She confessed there was alcohol in the drink. She said she didn't think it would be a problem and wanted to help me relax. I was in shock. Why did she spike my drink with alcohol without telling me? My friend and maid of honor, Emily, told the paramedics that a few minutes before walking to the altar, I had taken an anti-anxiety pill. I was so nervous about everything going perfectly that I decided to take a small dose to calm down. It turned out that the combination of the medication and the alcohol caused me to faint. Apparently, a chemical reaction occurred that simply knocked me out. The paramedics explained that mixing alcohol with certain medications can be extremely dangerous, and that I was lucky things didn't end up worse. When the paramedics left, Jaden turned to Maria and told her to leave. His voice was shaking with rage, and Maria looked stunned. She tried to justify herself, claiming she didn't mean anything bad and that it was a misunderstanding, but Jaden didn't want to hear it. He shouted for her to leave the banquet immediately. I had never seen him so furious before, and my heart broke that he was forced to fight with his own mother on his wedding day. Because of all this commotion, I felt terrible, and the holiday atmosphere collapsed. The guests were uncomfortable, and the joy we had worked so hard to create simply vanished. People started leaving one by one, and soon the celebration ended prematurely. It hurt to see everyone leaving so early, and the day I had dreamed of for so long turned out to be ruined. Jaden and I returned to our hotel room, and I tried to process everything that had happened. I felt numb and tired, and then a wave of sadness hit. This day was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life, but instead, it turned into a catastrophe because of my mother-in-law's stupid stunt. I couldn't believe Maria's thoughtlessness had ruined our special celebration. Maria continued to send messages and call both me and Jaden, but we didn't answer. We needed time to think everything over and decide how to proceed. I saw how hard this was for Jaden. He loved his mom, but at the same time, he was incredibly angry because of her action. The situation was complicated, and I didn't know how to fix it. When we finally returned home, I tried to leave it all behind and focus on our new life, but it wasn't easy. Every time I thought about our wedding, my heart tightened with sadness. I replayed the events over and over in my head, thinking about how everything could have been different if Maria hadn't pulled that stunt. It felt like a dark cloud was hanging over a beautiful memory. Fortunately, we soon went on our honeymoon. It was a real relief to get away from all the drama and stress. Jaden and I had a wonderful time exploring new places and creating beautiful memories together. It was the perfect escape. And during those 2 weeks, I felt everything return to normal. We laughed, relaxed, and enjoyed each other's company without a care in the world. But when we returned, reality hit immediately. As soon as we pulled up to the house, Maria was already waiting for us at the door. My heart sank, and a knot of anxiety appeared in my stomach. I knew a confrontation was inevitable, but I wasn't ready for it to happen the moment we got back. The worst part was that she didn't even apologize. Instead, she kept insisting it wasn't her fault and that it was all just a joke. She tried to justify her actions, saying, "I didn't think you'd feel bad, and I just wanted to lighten the mood." It infuriated me that she refused to take responsibility. I couldn't believe she was trying to dismiss what happened as a harmless prank. Jaden couldn't take it anymore. He exploded and said this was the end, that she had crossed the line and must admit her guilt. If she wanted him to speak to her again, she had to apologize to me. He said she had deeply hurt me, and it was unacceptable. Maria tried to interrupt, but he didn't let her. He continued, "From now on, they will only see each other on holidays. No unexpected weekend visits, no unnecessary calls. Everything would be as if they were distant relatives who only meet on special occasions." Maria was shocked and burst into tears, but Jaden stood his ground. I saw how hard it was for him to put his mother in her place, but he was determined to stand by my side and make sure I felt safe. Yesterday, while I was at the office, Maria called me. I was very surprised since we hadn't spoken for a long time, and I didn't expect her to reach out at all, especially during the workday. She said she was standing outside my office and wanted to meet. I was caught off guard and definitely didn't want her coming inside and making a scene, so I decided to go out to her myself to avoid unnecessary drama. We sat in a small cafe across the street, and I immediately saw she was very upset. As soon as we started talking, she burst into tears. It was terribly awkward. People around us even started turning and looking at us. She said she couldn't believe what Jaden was doing. He wasn't answering her calls or messages. She was desperate and begged me to talk to him on her behalf, claiming she just wanted everything to be like before. I want to remind you that at that point, Maria had still not apologized to me for what happened at the wedding. It seemed she completely denied the consequences of her actions. I told her that instead of coming to my work and making a scene, she should think about how her action affected me and Jaden. I explained that she ruined my wedding day, and it wasn't fair to expect me to just turn a blind eye and talk to my husband for her sake. She tried to justify herself, saying she didn't want to cause harm and that she was sorry my body reacted that way. It seemed she couldn't see beyond her own perspective at all to understand that her actions had real consequences. She kept repeating, "If I had known it would turn out like that, I would have never done it." Meanwhile, she continued to sob, and people in the cafe looked at us with concern. I was terribly uncomfortable and only thought about how to get out of there. I told her I'd see what I could do, but I didn't make any promises. I still haven't spoken to Jaden about this because I'm not sure if I'm ready to forgive Maria. After all, she didn't even apologize until I reminded her myself. My mom advises letting the situation go and forgiving my mother-in-law, but I'm not sure. What do you think? I really need advice. Well, before we continue, I suggest answering the author's question in the comments right now. Personally, I wouldn't forgive this mother-in-law and wouldn't talk to Jaden about it, no matter how harsh it seems. Because if a mother-in-law really wants to fix the relationship with her son, why wouldn't she just apologize? She doesn't want to apologize, but she wants everything to be like before. And what is like before? It means continuing to humiliate the daughter-in-law, it turns out. Plus, the author says that in Jaden's presence, the mother-in-law behaved normally, but when Jaden left, she behaved very badly. But it seems to me that even when alone with Jaden, the mother-in-law also dropped some bad comments, because such a harsh reaction at the wedding can only be understood that way. Well, at least it became obvious to me that Jaden didn't suspect his mother's ill intent for no reason. Jaden's mother had likely been saying things like, She's a bad match for you and all that for a long time. Some might say, why shouldn't she actually lose weight? But heck, everyone has their own tastes. Some like ladies a bit curvier, some, on the contrary, thinner. And there's no accounting for taste, as they say. Anyway, let's continue and find out what happened next. Update 1. Hi everyone. Huge thanks for your comments and advice. It's very important for me to be able to share my story and get support. I'm already tired of Maria's constant calls and messages, and it started wearing me out, so I decided it was time to talk to Jaden again and find a way to solve the problem. I told him Maria came to my office and apologized. That was a bit of an exaggeration because, in reality, her apology was far from what I wanted to hear. But I felt it was time to try to at least slightly improve the relationship. I told Jaden that I forgave her. In general, it was true because I wanted to leave all this nightmare behind and focus on the future. Jaden looked at me with concern and asked, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, but we need to set boundaries with your mom to avoid new drama." He believed that I was ready to forgive her, but he also understood. It wasn't just about me, but about us as a couple and our need for peace and stability. After our conversation, Jaden wrote to Maria. He said he was glad she apologized to me and that we were ready to try to mend the relationship. But he also made it clear that he was standing his ground. No unexpected visits, no constant calls, and no attempts to cross boundaries. He said we needed space to focus on our own lives. Maria replied almost immediately, writing that she was sorry and just wanted to be a part of our lives. She promised to respect our boundaries and give us the space we asked for. I still have mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm glad Maria seems to have taken our conditions seriously. On the other, I still feel anxiety because I know one violation on her part and all the drama will return. I'm trying to focus on the good and reminding myself that there is progress, even if it's slow. Also, many of you asked about my anxiety. I'll just say I'm not very comfortable discussing it, but I appreciate your concern. My anxiety wasn't related to doubting Jaden or our relationship. I knew he was the one from the moment we started dating seriously. It was all about the wedding day itself and the stress of organizing such a large-scale event. We had over 200 guests, and I really wanted everything to go perfectly for them. I was afraid something would go wrong. The food would be tasteless, the music wouldn't be fun, the decorations wouldn't be as I planned. I was constantly thinking about the little things that could ruin the day, and it was incredibly stressful. I wanted our guests to get the most enjoyment and remember the wedding as a beautiful and joyful event. Update 2. Hi everyone. Something unexpected happened and I don't know how to feel about it. Everything was going more or less peacefully until last weekend when Maria called Jaden and invited us to dinner at her place. She said it was important to sit at the table together and start returning to normal life after everything that happened. Jaden told me about this invitation and asked what I thought. I replied it would be okay if we went. Maybe this was her way of trying to make amends. When we arrived at Maria's, she met us with a warm smile. But after dinner, she did something that completely floored me. She left the room and returned with a check for $5,000. She handed it to me and said she was very sorry she ruined my wedding day and that, although the past cannot be changed, she wanted to give this money as a way to make amends. I was in shock and immediately felt uncomfortable. Such a gesture was completely unexpected, and I didn't know how to react. I immediately refused and said I didn't need it and that it was better to just leave everything behind. Jaden agreed and said she didn't need to give us money. No, Maria insisted. She refused to take the check back and literally shoved it into my coat pocket. I was so stunned I didn't know what to do. She looked desperate, as if she needed us to accept the money. This made everything even more awkward. On the way home, Jaden and I discussed what happened and both felt confused. Why did Maria give us such a large sum? It looked strange and made me wonder. Is she truly sorry or just trying to buy our forgiveness? Jaden is just as upset as I am. We both want to handle this situation fairly and respectfully. We don't want to offend Maria or reject her attempt to fix something, but we also don't want to feel like we can be bought. If anyone has had a similar experience or has advice, I would be very grateful for your thoughts. Update 3. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and honestly, not much has changed. We still have Maria's check. We haven't cashed it. It's just lying in a drawer like a reminder of everything that happened. I'm not sure what we'll eventually do with it, but for now, it's just there. The relationship with Maria is generally at the same level. We are sort of stuck in a state of waiting, trying to be polite and respectful, but not delving into the past. She respects our boundaries, and I'm very happy about that. She no longer shows up without warning and has stopped the endless calls and messages. It seems she really is trying to change, and this gives me hope for the future. Jaden and Maria talk regularly on the phone, and their conversations sound positive. I'm glad their relationship hasn't suffered too much from everything that happened. I also occasionally communicate with Maria. Our conversations are polite, a bit formal, but we both want to remain friendly. I think this will be my last update. I don't think much will change in the near future, and I hope everything will gradually improve. I want to focus on the good and move on. I think right now, this is the best I can do for myself. If something serious happens, maybe I'll write another update. Thank you all again for everything, and I wish everyone a wonderful day. Well, that's all. There were no more updates, so I suspect the relationship developed smoothly from there. It turns out I was wrong, and Maria was indeed worth forgiving. Maybe it's just that kind of person who never admits guilt. But nevertheless, even such people can somehow improve, as we see. Also, I thought at the moment the mother-in-law gave the $5,000 check that many already rushed to write in the comments. Heck no. If they gave me a check like that, like, let me have a bad relationship with my mother-in-law, but have her give me checks like that, I'd gladly accept. Anyway, if you thought that, write it down. It'll be interesting to see how many people think so. Thanks for listening to this story to the end. Check out our previous videos, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new videos if you haven't already. Good luck!